All right. Good morning, everybody. This is Ron Deering coming to you from my home office in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I wanted to do a quick, short live before our training day starts. Got an amazing amount of great training, great leaders to this Saturday, and I'm excited about that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about getting a perspective because my wife and I were talking, and I give her credit for this. She gave me the idea, but we were chatting about this morning about just everybody's getting stir crazy and they're having to stay in the house, or they can only walk around their neighborhood, or whatever. They're feeling like life is just, they can't believe it, this quarantine thing. And I want to give a little perspective because I want to tell you a little story. Back in the 80s and 90s, I had a job. Very exciting, right? I had a job. But this career, I worked for a community. Good morning, Thomas. I worked for a government. I worked for a civilian company that got government contracts in a specialized area of the government. We did some interesting things. But I spent a lot of time back then, a lot of time on U.S. submarines. So for those of you, let me give you kind of a picture of what this looked like. The submarines, you only see, when they're on the surface, you see, about half. A good portion of the submarine is underwater. So you see kind of the top half, and then what they call the conning tower. It's that part that stands up straight. And if you're looking directly from the front, standing at the front of the submarine, looking down the submarine, it looks like this. And then it's got what they call the fairwater planes on either side that go up and down, right? And then if you looked all the way back to the back, you would see the aft end of the boat and so forth, right? But a majority of the boat is underwater, and we would do missions on these boats, and it would start with us getting everything on there that we needed, getting our stuff on, and getting the crew on there. And I was a civilian, but I had a civilian team with me that I ran, and we would go down. You'd crawl down the hatch, and there was a couple of hatches. There was an aft hatch, and I used that aft hatch for loading provisions and food and all of that stuff on there, any other equipment possibly. And then there was a main hatch, and then there was a hatch at the top of the sail that you could go up and down also, but they normally didn't use that in port. The only time they used that typically was maybe on the surface or to other areas, which we won't talk about. But so anyways, we would get the submarine all ready to go, and then we would all jump in the boat. They would close the hatch. The captain and the crew that needed to would be up in the conning tower, and the boat would pull away from the dock but using subtenders and tugs and so forth, and they would take you out to a spot where you could finally navigate on your own and get going, right? And we'd take off from the port, whatever port it might be, and we'd head out, and you would go on the surface for a little while, and again, the captain and the chief of the watch and so forth, they might be up in the conning tower, kind of checking things out, depending on the weather and everything. It was a beautiful day, and then they would go down, close off that hatch. All the hatches would be closed, and you'd hear that familiar dive bell, and they'd come over what they call the 1MC, and you'd hear dive, 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 and that boat would go under the water. Typically, that was the last time that you would see any fresh air, anything, for 90 days. 90 days. We'd go under for 90 days on a patrol or on a mission, and we'd be gone for 3 months. 3 months straight. Now, picture this, that you could not walk, and because you were out there were boxes of food in the passageways, in the aisleways, right? And they were stacked up. So you'd be walking down these boxes, kind of making sure, because there's pipes and everything all over in the overhead, and the passageways are very, very small and narrow, and you would go I was the guy, Scott. You were the guy that fixed the 1MC. Okay, well then you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Because the 1MC is the communication on the big boats, on the ships, along with the boats. Now, you don't call a submarine a ship; it's a boat. You don't call a carrier a boat; it's a ship. So, but anyways, you couldn't walk down these passageways, without, if someone else was coming the other way, you'd have to turn sideways, and you're always running into. You couldn't go 10 feet without running into somebody. We had the sailors. I didn't, but the sailors had what they call hot rack. So there are enough racks, there are enough bunks on the boat, so that when you were not when you were working, somebody was sleeping in your rack, and when you weren't working, you were sleeping in rack. And they were working, and that was called hot racking. You both used the same. Two sailors used the same rack, you know. But there were no windows. It's not like you see on TV, like with a Sequest or something, and there are windows, and you can see fish. And there's no windows, nothing. All it is metal. The air smells like hydraulic fluid and oil, and it's musty, and sailors, and you can take a shower, but you can only be in there a couple of minutes, otherwise you get razzed, and they cut you off or take it. I mean, it's what I consider a true quarantine. You don't have any real benefits. And every single time we went out on these, about halfway through, about a month or so into it, people would start getting stir crazy, and little fights would break out, and people would be snippy with it, and there'd be anger and all these things going on. And then all of a sudden that would pass, and you'd make it through the rest of the time. And you could tell how long you had left, because you would eat your way into actually going down to the deck plates. You weren't walking on boxes anymore. So you might be walking along, and then, oh, hey, and then back up again. And, so as you could stand up, some of the taller people, I really didn't have a challenge with it a lot of times. The more you could stand up in a passageway, the closer you were to getting off the boat. Now, there were times, very seldom though, but there were times when you might be down somewhere, maybe in the Bahamas or something, and you might surface for a while, and they might have a swim call or something, but it wasn't very often. Most of the time, they closed that hatch. It didn't open again until you were at the port. And I would get off of these things, and basically want to burn your clothes. You don't realize how bad you smell until you get off into the fresh air, and people are coming up to you and going, "Oh man, you really reek," right? So the reason I tell you this is because, there are people out there right now that are going stir crazy because of this so-called quarantine, which I gotta laugh at it, but because they can't go out to the nightclubs, or they can't do this, or they can't. I mean, this is perspective. If you keep things in perspective, it's not that big of a deal. Right? You still can go out. It's like we can still go outside here. We can take the grandkids and walk and ride their bikes and everything. They can see the fresh air. They've got communication with their friends. We do Zooms with their classroom. I mean, we didn't have any of that stuff. I didn't have any outside communication. We didn't have any. We just didn't have anything that we could communicate, or we didn't know what was going on. Right? So. Perspective. Now, how does that relate to you building a business? You need to have perspective in building your business. I have people all the time saying, "Rob, this is hard. This is hard." Compared to what? It's hard compared to what? See, to me, what was hard was getting up every morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, and getting out of the house by 5 o'clock in the morning, and having to, drive to work. And, when I was actually in my career, it was physically demanding. It was dangerous. It was, long hours, and I was away from my family all the time. That was hard. Now I work from home. I can get up and move, go where I want to do what I need to. If I need to take a break, as long as my schedule doesn't have anything else go, I've got all kinds of freedom, time freedom, just space freedom, my life freedom. I mean, there's so many. So when you're looking at your business and you're thinking, "Oh, this is hard," ask yourself, compared to what? What is this hard compared to? Yeah, it's certainly different. It's certainly something that you've got to grow and you've got to learn and you've got to, become better at your skill set and your mindset and your tool set and everything that there's out there. You've got to become better, and you've got to be a perpetual student as you're taking massive action and building and so forth. But how hard really is that? When you're sitting back and saying, "Man, this is hard," you've got to look at it and see it perspective as compared to what. There are people that are my age that are still out there digging ditches and doing construction and so forth. They say they love it, but they come home every night and they're aching and they're sore and they're miserable and their day is done. And every time they want to do something, they've got to ask permission. They've got to get permission to take a day off, or if they're sick, they got to make sure they got enough sick leave and all of these other things. So when people are talking to me about how hard network marketing is, I have to ask them compared to what. So the reason I tell you the submarine story, because everybody is experiencing this quarantine thing now. I'm thinking, oh man, this is just so bad. And compared to what? To me, this is virtually nothing. I've been in places where you're really, in my mind, quarantined. You really can't go anywhere. You really can't see anything. You really can't communicate. Put 135 to 138 people in a tin can and go into the ocean for 3 months. Right now, some of our bigger submarines, the big Tridents and the big ballistic, submarines are a lot bigger. Some of them have indoor tracks and all kinds of things, but you still can't see the outside. You're still contained in there. It's got, you're cooped up. You can only move so much. You can only do so much. You've only got so much entertainment, and things have come a long way. But that's what I consider more of a real quarantine compared to what we have now. I'm looking outside at a cloudy day, but it's a cloudy day. It's air. It's a good thing. When I hear people talk about their business, and it's the same thing, you've got to figure out what it is. You think it's hard compared to what? Really break it down and look at it and say, why am I thinking this way? First off, why am I having a struggle with this? Why do I think this is so hard? Look at my current job or business that I'm in, or career that I have. How long did it take me day in and day out working a 9 to 5 job to get where I'm at today? Because you might be 15, 20 years into a career and think, yeah, I don't have to really work that hard. But it wasn't always that way. Probably took you 10 years to get to a spot where you felt comfortable and you were making enough money to survive and everything else. Yet we get into network marketing in a year or two into it. We're 6 months into it for a lot of people, 3 months into it. Well, this doesn't work. This sucks. I can't do this, right? So you've got to look at the perspective. You got to have a perspective that, you don't want to compare yourself to other people and all that, but you've got to compare yourself against yourself, right? You've got to have a perspective. And this is hard compared to what? What other things have I done in my life that now are easy, that were hard in the beginning, that I pushed through and got better at, and it became easy? It wasn't always that way, right? And so now you look at it and you look at your life and you say, okay, yeah, I've got this network marketing business. I've worked at it for 3 months, and man, I don't know that I can do it. You just got a bad perspective on it. You're trying to get to somewhere a lot faster, like you've got a transporter or something. Like you're trying to get from A to B, which normally you would get to A to B. It would take 6 hours to get there. You're trying to get there in 15 minutes, and there's you can't do it, and you're frustrated, right? Well, we would say that's ridiculous, but people do that all the time. So I hope this is helped. I've got to get myself up, get myself ready here and prepared for the training coming up in about 45 minutes. But take some time today. Just look at your perspective. If you're stir crazy and sitting around and thinking, oh man, this quarantine thing, I don't know how people can do it and everything else, really look at the perspective of what it could be. Go out on Google and Google a submarine. See if you can find some pictures on the inside of a submarine. And our nuclear submarines are a lot bigger and better and cleaner than the old diesel boats. I went out a couple of times on the old diesel submarines, and talk about nasty and cramped. And if you're claustrophobic, man, I'm telling you, it just wouldn't work. So when we talk about quarantine, we're not really in a quarantine situation. We're in a situation where people got to use common sense and be considerate and think about what they do so they don't spread this thing around. But we're not really in a quarantine situation. We're just, not liking the fact that I can't go out to the nightclubs or the bars, or I can't do this or I can't do that, that I just feel like I have to do. But I can do all of this other stuff that's out there. So, all right. God bless you all. Have an amazing, amazing weekend wherever you are. And please take today and just put things in perspective for your business compared to what, and for your life. Just get out and do something that you know you can do without, running into people, coughing on them, or getting exposed and all that stuff. But there's all kinds of things that can be done. All kinds of things that can be done with you and your family. A very good, close couple friend of mine, I saw that they were getting out in the car for the first time in a month or whatever, and they were just so excited about it. Well, drive around in your car. Go see some places. Stop alongside the road. Get out of a wooded area. Just walk around a little bit. There's all kinds of things you can do. You're not really quarantined. So God bless you all. Have an amazing, amazing weekend.